By now, I hope you understand that even though we're working with larger numbers, it doesn't necessarily make the math more difficult. It just means that there's more steps. Why is it so important to find the multiple of the divisor that is closest to the dividend? In this lesson, you will learn to divide 4-digit dividends by using friendly multiples and extended facts of the divisor. Landmark multiples, groups of 1, 5, and 10, can help us get close to multi-digit dividends. But watch what happens when we're multiplying a large multi-digit number by a small divisor. 3 times 100 is 300. That's not going to really help us yet. 3 times 500, 1,500. So now we're into the thousands. And 3 times 1,000 is 3,000. But you'll notice there's still plenty of room left in the thousands place value. But 3 times 5,000, well, that's a little too large. That's 15,000. So I'm going to add to our 100, 500, and 1,000 groups of 3 the landmarks 3 times 2,000 equals 6,000, and 3 times 3,000 equals 9,000. And I can see there that we're counting by 3,000s, and the next one will be out of the thousands place value. Let's find the quotient of 7,457 divided by 3. And I know I'm going to need some room for this one. So let's look at how we recompose 7,457 into friendly multiples of 3. Start by seeing that 100 groups of 3 is 300, way too small. 3,000 groups of 3, too large. So I see that 6,000 is as close as we're going to come. So let's take 2,000 groups of 3, or 6,000, out of our dividend, which leaves us with 1,457 remaining. Now, I noticed that 3 times 500 is 1,500, which is too large, and 3 times 100 equaling 300 is too small. So let's get another set of landmarks to look at. So I see here that 3 times 400, 1,200, is close to 1,457. So let's take 400 groups of 3 away from our dividend, leaving us with 257. Back to our multiples in the tens. We have 3 times 100, too large. 3 times 50, 150. So it's somewhere between those two. So let's go back. 3 times 90, 80 times 3 is 240. So let's take 80 groups of 3 out of our dividend, leaving us with 17. And now we're back into fact territory. So 5 groups of 3 is 15, and that leaves us with 2 remaining. So 7,457 recomposed into friendly groups of 3 is 6,000 plus 1,200 plus 240 plus 15 with 2 remaining. That's 2,000 groups of 3 plus 400 groups of 3 plus 80 groups of 3 plus 5 groups of 3 with 2 remaining. So all that's left to do is put them back together, 2,485 with 2 remaining. Notice how even though we used our landmark numbers, it still took a lot of steps to solve. Notice that even though we relied on our landmark numbers, it still took a considerable amount of steps to solve this large multi-digit dividend. So that's why you want to be as familiar as you can with these extended facts to cut down on the amount of steps it takes to find the quotient. The mistake I see most often when you're working with large multi-digit dividends is students first focus so much on recomposing the number that sometimes they forget about the small pieces like subtracting correctly. So you can see that 3,600 is greater than 3,500. So remember to check your work as you go. As you recompose 9,532 into friendly groups of 6, they should add back up to equal the dividend you began with. And that way, before you continued on, you'd know that there was a mistake you needed to look out for. In this lesson, you have learned to divide 4-digit dividends by using friendly multiples and extended facts of the divisor.